All right, guys, what's up? This is Joey McKernan. Welcome to the Chosen Show. Man, I'm really excited for this episode. Again, our passion, our dream, the purpose of the show is to ignite you into your God-given purpose. We don't care if you're starting businesses, starting churches, starting anything. For the kingdom, we want to ignite you into that. And so our prayer is that this content just launches you into whatever God has for your life. And so I'm really excited for this interview with my friend, Adam Weber. Adam, how are you, bro?
I'm doing good. Joey, it's a huge blessing to be on. I shared this. I think this is my fourth interview of the day. And yet when I saw your name, it was just an absolute gift.
Come
Joey
on,
and I
man.
went to Colorado together, and we stayed in the same cabin together.
You did.
So I'm just grateful for you, and just it's just awesome crossing paths again. And so this is a big deal.
Come on, man. Well, appreciate you taking time. I know you're a busy man. We did travel to Colorado together, and that was an adventure. That was right before kind of the COVID and all that stuff. And we didn't know what was going on, but you know what? It was a great experience and a bunch of leaders together in Colorado, just hanging out. If you don't know Adam, Adam is the pastor of Embrace Church, and he is also a father. He also is the author of Love Has a Name. I'm gonna hold this up right here for you.
There it is.
Come on, man. How has this been? It's been going good for you?
It is. It's my second book. I didn't want to write a book. Ended up writing two of them,
Hmm.
and yet this book, it's so one of my best friends said, Adam, this book is so you.
Hmm.
And so it was actually incredibly easy.
Hmm.
I'm not saying that. I mean, it was brutal. Writing a book is brutal, but it was
Yeah.
really an easy book for me to put down because it's something I truly live out and try to live out, and I'm a work in progress in every way. But it's just so cool when you get done and you're like, that is so me. It's crazy.
And you're right. Books are brutal, but they're beautiful when they get out. And
Yeah.
I've been on Instagram seeing people share about this thing and share how this has changed their life. So I'm excited to dive in. But I would love to know, man, like what sparked this idea? Obviously, love is a big topic to discuss,
Yeah.
and how you kind of break that down. Do you want to first kind of share where did it come from, and then give us kind of a broad overview of what it's about?
That's great. I shared a part of this with you out in Colorado. 2 years ago, I went through the hardest season of my life.
Mm,
Genuinely, not just leadership wise or whatever. It
right.
was the hardest season of my life. When it comes to loving people, it's been one of my strong suits, honestly. I have very few strong suits, but I genuinely just love people. Well, 2 years ago, I had to make a really hard leadership decision, and
Mm,
I had a whole bunch of people. It was not a popular decision. It was the right decision, but it wasn't popular. I had a whole bunch of people walk out of my life,
mm,
and really through a combination of maybe being burnt out and also just having people walk away from me. I
mhm.
was so broken, bitter, jaded, hurting. I didn't want to love anybody. I
Wow.
wanted to love my wife and kids, a few close friends, and that's it. Everybody else, I was like, you can just kind of mind your own business.
Right.
And it's crazy because now I'm in one of the most life-giving seasons of my life. But this book released in a time when it feels like our world is where I was 2 years ago. Our world right now is like, I want to love my close friends, a few family members, and
Mm,
everybody else who doesn't vote like me, look like me, think like me, be like me, can just mind their own business.
mm,
And thankfully for all of us, myself and myself specifically, when I wrote this book, God doesn't let us stay there.
mm,
Jesus is like, well, I know that's how you feel, but loving me and loving others is the most important thing. And
mm.
so I really wrote this book out of a time in my life when I didn't want to love anybody.
Right.
And I needed to ask God for his help. The same power that raised Christ from the dead lives inside of us. And so, so this book, that's where the idea came from. And
Mm,
then I began to think about all the people who had shown me love. It's easy right now. If I was to ask anybody listening, who are the 5 people who annoy you, have screwed you over, who have wronged you?
right.
All of us could list off those names because we curse them out in our cars. We airbox them while we're showering. We daydream about body slamming them. Like,
Right. Right.
but
Right.
what if we began to think about and focus on all the people who have loved us?
It's good.
The people who showed up when nobody else showed up.
It's good.
The people who were faithful when we were unfaithful. The people who loved us when we were unlovable. And so I just began to think about those people. So the chapters, it's the names of 27 people who have either loved me or I've tried to love them. And really, like, God helped me realize more, Jesus, the love has a name. The name is Jesus.
Right.
But really, all of us can show each other what it looks like to love and to have the love of Christ.
No, I think just going off what you're sharing, what I loved about this book, and I'm not done with it, but I'm in it.
Yeah.
Man, when we met, I was like, man, few things. One, this man is probably one of the most genuine guys I've met. And here's another thing. You also are a leader of a lot of people. And you're so humble, you probably won't even share that on this podcast. It probably makes you cringe inside.
It does.
I've met a lot of people who have led big churches, and a lot of people look up to them. And I will say this, arrogance creeps in, and, they get kind of too important for other people, and that, that happens. Bro, when I met you, I had no idea. You had such a level of genuineness to you that you expressed to me. And I was like, man, I want to learn more about this Adam guy, how amazing he is. And I'm like, this man's leading some big stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, your love was so genuine. I know this is probably hard for you to receive.
It's very hard.
I'm just going to keep saying it. Your love for me and just for some of the guys in the cabin in Colorado, man, was so genuine. You would have never known, but I just know your impact is incredible. What I love about your book is that you lift other people up still in humility, man. Like your humility is amazing. And you lift people up and how they have loved you in that process. And I think that was very unique. I haven't read a lot of books like that. I would love to know, talking to our audience, I think understanding and putting the people in our lives that will love us deeply. Because what I love about your book is you're talking about those people who go the extra mile and who love on a deeper level. I love your part in your book. We're going to get into it, but you talk about fans versus friends. Really good, I think, in today's world. But what was that story? You said love is for the unpopular. I think that was really good. Can you expand on that chapter a little bit? You talk about Jake. He's that story, right? How do you relate? Because I think people are battling right now to they don't want to say what they really feel because that makes them unpopular. Finding people that will love you amongst different opinions. How do you find people who will love you like Jake loved you?
Yeah, it's Jake. So Jake is my elementary best friend.
Yeah.
And it's pretty cool. Jake isn't a Christian. And it's been cool for him to read his chapter. Yeah. It's pretty cool. I reached out to him. We still stay in contact. And he said, I've read the chapter 5 times and I've read the whole book. He's like, it ended up, and he said, I've actually come out of a really hard season in my life and battling depression and whatever else. And he's like, man, this encouraged me. But Jake taught me that love pursues the unpopular. And, I look at Jesus, and Jesus was constantly pursuing the unpopular. In that chapter, I've talked about the story of Levi. And Levi is this tax collector who everybody wants to stay away from. And Jesus not only invites him to come follow him, but then Levi is so excited to be invited that he invites Jesus over to his house, and he invites all of his other tax collector sinner buddies to come along with it. And I just think Jesus was willing to associate himself with these people, knowing that people were going to grumble and mumble about him. And I just wonder, for all of us, it's easy to pursue the popular person, but what about the unpopular person? Good. What about the person who's going to hurt your reputation? What about the person who is going to make people question your reputation by being around them? And even lately, even since writing the book, one of the things God's been challenging me, he's like, hey, Adam, you're quick to get to know the most important person in the room, Like you can find that person pretty well. And I think all of us are wired that way. And that's great, because sometimes the most important person in the room has some different gifts and skill sets that can be used to tell people about Jesus. That's great. And I don't want to belittle that person either, but how about this, Adam? How about you seek out the least important person in the room first?
That's good.
And in every circle, because you get in a room full of people, immediately, I got chickens in my backyard. Chickens have a very established pecking order. It's bizarre. If you take a chicken and bring it into a coop with another group of chickens, they immediately will have to figure out the pecking order of who's most important. Human beings, and people would say chickens are not very smart. Human beings are just a little bit more intelligent than chickens.
Sure.
I mean, like we do the same exact thing.
Yeah, no, you're right.
We just do it more kindly. And, but I've been feeling God just being like, you want to be used by me, Adam. You want to live a life that's like mine, that's pleasing to my heart. Treat that least important person like they're the most important person in the room. And I can honestly say, it's been one of the most life-giving things that I've tried to intentionally start doing even the last few months. Of just like scanning the room, and you see the person who's the oddball, the person who's the misfit, and just, hey, how's your day going? Walking down the street and literally approaching the person that everybody else is trying to avoid. Dude, what's going on? There's a guy named now downtown. I just saw him today. I was gonna honk at him, but I didn't want him to think that I was honking like to get him off the road. He's a low income man that when you watch, almost everybody tries to avoid him. And the one day he was asking for money. I came up, I asked him his name. He said, "My name's Gary." And I genuinely didn't have anything to offer him. In that moment, I'm like, I actually don't have anything. And the next time I saw him, again, everybody's trying to avoid him. I walked up and I said, "Gary." And he was so startled that I knew his name. He's like, "Yeah?" Almost like he was guilty of something. And I'm like, "How are you doing?" And he just was like, at first he was defensive, like, "Why do you know my name?" I'm like, "I talked to you the other day. I remember, like, we're going to, like, I asked if we could grab a meal together sometime." And he's like, "Oh," like, finally it clicked for him. And I was like, "Can we still do that sometime?" And he said, "I'd love that." But again, for me, that ended up being life-giving to me, that I got to just come up to him. It was this simple thing, but again, my friend Jake, like, when he was the only kid in my class who wanted to be with me when it wasn't popular to be with me. He didn't care. And he was one of the cool kids in the class. And more than Jake, Jesus, he comes to us in our lowest, crappiest moments. Something I've been one of, like a life goal of mine. It's an awesome thing to be with somebody on the best day of their life. Like, "Hey dude, you released a book," or, "Hey, you got engaged." Like, "Oh, that's so awesome." And that's such a huge honor. For me, one of my life goals is to be the first person that someone thinks of on their worst day. The day they find out their wife is leaving. Or the day that they are finally telling somebody that they've been cheating on their wife. Or the day that their name's in the newspaper and no one else's. It's not a popular thing. One of the things I've been doing just the last few months is anytime that I have any ability to touch that person who's at the center of crap, I try just to let them know. Even just recently, there was a person who was fairly known locally that got into some trouble. And I just immediately reached out and just said, "Hey, I just want you to know, I'm beside you. I'm praying for you. I'm cheering for you." And the person responded immediately and said, "This has been the only bright spot in my entire day." And that's why I just think, like, what an honor would it be to be someone's first phone call on their worst day? Because that's what we do with Jesus. We approach him on our worst days. And I want to be that too.
Man, like, your model, how you live your life is just incredible. And I think we fall into traps of cultural love. And what I love about your book is you redefine love. Not redefine it, you're just defining what Jesus showed.
Yes.
I think you're redefining it for us that have gotten caught up in, oh, I'm going to love, but I'm going to love the person that's the most important. Or I'm going to love the person who has the most connections, or they wrote books or
That's
speak,
right.
whatever. And leaders get caught up in that crap all the time. What I love, I think I read Bob Goff does this. He puts in his calendar days that you were sharing of his friends that are like their worst day of their life, like anniversaries of people who passed away. And he will call those people on those days that are probably the most painful days of their year. Guys, as you're listening to this and you're listening to Adam, I want us to reflect on our lives. I find myself, and I'm sure a lot of us, we get caught up. We get caught up in defining love in a very worldly way.
That's
and we
right.
don't even know we're doing it. And so I want to challenge us as we walk into our calling. When we walk into a room, I love what I was like, who are the people we're looking for? Is it the most important, the most connected, those people? And that has a place. I don't want to throw that away. There are people too. There are people too. They need love. But start maybe with the person who is least popular or least connected, and see what Christ does in your heart. And I think that's a great place to start. And I love what you just shared too. What did you say? You said, I want to be the person that someone calls on their worst day.
Worst day.
That's such a powerful perspective shifter.
Yeah. And Joey, like, I appreciate your kindness and like just your kind words towards me. Even as you were speaking, I'm like, but I'll tell you, like, specifically the last 2 years why I've wanted to do this more and more and more. And I didn't realize it until the very end of the book. Why do I want to do this for me personally? John in the Bible refers himself as the one he loves. Like he basically, like, his, instead of like like when you introduce somebody, like, yeah, I'm married to this person, like this is what I do for a job. Basically, the first thing he keeps saying about himself is, I'm the one he loves. Like, his defining mark is that he's loved by God. Okay. And so it's like, okay, like, what do you know that I don't? Well, thankfully, he wrote us a few letters as well. In one of those letters, he says, when we love one another, his love is made perfect within us. God's love is made perfect within us. And I always just thought and saw that as when we love another person, they're able to see God's perfect love within us, which is pretty awesome because I feel broken most days. I'm like, that's so cool that when I love somebody that, like, they see God's perfect love inside of me. But here's what kind of this moment that I'm like, yes, is I just felt like God was like, but it also applies to you too, Adam. Like, get this, when you love another person, my love is made perfect, not just to the other person seeing my perfect love, it's also made perfect within you.
That's good.
I just had this moment where it's like, why does it feel so good to unconditionally love another person? Because God's love in that moment is made perfect within us. Like, when we're loving somebody with no strings attached, we are never more close to the heart of God. Yes. And that's why it feels so good. Yes. And so even the last 2 years, on the days that I've specifically been restless and self-absorbed, and my world is all about me and me, which is the disgusting place to be. I mean, there's no joy, no happiness, no contentment there. What I've been trying to do is, when I feel that way, I've prayed, like, God, if there's one person that I can love today, would you show them to me? And, or is there one thing that I can do? Go do it. So an example of that, I got my signs right over there. On Christmas Eve, this last year, Christmas Eve, I was miserable. I was all like consumed with myself. As my message, are people going to like me because of my message? Like, are we attendance numbers? Like, I don't know why, but I was just self-absorbed. And so I was so miserable that I went home. I'm like, I'm just going to go home. It's like the day before Christmas, we had our first Christmas Eve service, Christmas Eve. So on my way home, I'm like, God, is there anything I can do to let people know that they're loved? Like, what should I do? What should I do? What should I do? Right before I got home, I got this idea. go make a cardboard sign and stand at the exit of the interstate with this sign to encourage people. So before I went in my house, I texted one of our executives. I'm like, hey, I think I'm going to stand beside I-229 at the exit there with a sign that says, I don't need any money. I just want you to know that God loves you.
Wow.
My friend wrote back and he said, you're insane. That was his first text message. His next text message came 2 seconds later. So first, you're insane. His second text message, go do it.
Wow. Come
and
on.
So I get this sign. I write, I don't need any money from you. I just want you to know that God loves you. Even on your worst day, God still loves you.
Come on, man.
I go, I park. I'm like, it feels like I have weights on my legs because it's like, what are you doing? Going to a street corner. And I started holding up this sign, and the response from it was insane.
Come on, man.
The amount of people who rolled down their windows were just like, thank you. I was offered hundreds of dollars. I'm like, no, I cannot take your money. I don't need your money. I had 2 old ladies blow me kisses. I had this one manly looking guy in this huge Dodge Ram look at me like he was going to run me over. And then you could see his eyes reading the sign. And as soon as he got to the bottom, he rolled his window down.
Yeah.
And he pulled up to me and he said, hey man, it's been a really, really rough day. And thank you so much for telling me that.
Wow. Come on.
And it just ended up being the most life-giving thing. I didn't even realize it. 2 different people took my picture and posted it all over Facebook. And it ended up being this thing that ended up encouraging a whole bunch of people.
Come on.
And I'm like, it's just in that moment where I'm like, my only intent was to take the focus off of me and to put it on others and to put it on God. And I honestly, it's so weird because I mentioned nothing about being a pastor or embrace. Like it wasn't a marketing pitch.
Right.
Clearly, I'm miserable, and I just want to tell people that they're loved. And even the amount of people that we ended up seeing because of it.
Right.
Just and I was almost hard to recognize. I had a hoodie, I had a stocking hat, and it just in those moments of feeling self-absorbed, I'm like, God, I just want to love one person.
So good. That's powerful. That's one
No.
I'm not just coming.
Yeah.
I think I love what you shared. We get in those modes, right? Where we just get stuck and we get selfish and we get, oh, it's about me. It's about this. It's about our marketing, our dream, our vision. And it's people, I talked to a lot of people and they're like, I'm stuck. I'm so just wrapped up in it. And I think that's really that's how we break free of those things is by loving. It's by reminding ourselves, this isn't about us. And I know as leaders, sometimes we make it about us. Let's just be honest. We make it about us, just like you, Sharon, vulnerably, we make it about ourselves. But when we get outside, I think I've preached my best sermons when I remind myself in my heart, this isn't about you, Joey. This isn't about you. And I know on a stage, there's temptation in that, but guys, when you're listening to this and you're listening to Adam's powerful words, if you're stuck right now, just start to serve. Find a place to serve. If you're a pastor and everybody reports to you and you feel stuck because you're making it about you, go to a homeless shelter and just start serving. And don't post it on Instagram. Don't post it on other. Just go talk about it, and not just talk about it, but do it. And again, I think that will help you get out of those places. And so, Adam, man, appreciate it.
I think the more successful you get, the more you need to clean toilets.
That's good.
Just those toilet cleaning moments. And again, the more success, the more you need those moments with people who have no clue who you are and don't care who you are.
So good.
And you just love them with no strings, no expectations expected. And I think for that person who's that driven leader, I'm an Enneagram 3 that loves climbing mountains. Yep. Not physical mountains, I would have a heart attack and die. But I'm talking.
What's hilarious is I think I've had so many 3s on this show. I need to mix it up or something. We're all 3.
Oh my gosh! I just am though. But it's crazy. It's crazy how these random things that like these times and these random relationships that actually aren't random at all. It's crazy how they can become the highlight of your week. And like, it's the moments that like keep you going, because it's one thing to be stuck when you're not successful or you haven't reached your goals, but there's another whole level of misery when you're stuck and you've achieved everything you've wanted.
Right.
And you get to the top of the mountain, you're like, this is it. I thought it was going to be a lot better than this.
Right. That's good.
Like, I got all the money and accomplishments that I could want, and I'm miserable. And that's where, like, one of my buddies, I just challenged him one day. He was at that place. I mean, he had reached success and yet he was miserable. And I just challenged him. I said, hey, even to take $300 out, take it out in tens, keep it in your suit coat or whatever you wear, and just look for opportunities to bless somebody, because he just felt so stuck. So sometimes it's the simplest things.
And I feel like in that we've defined success wrong.
Yes.
That's why we're miserable. Like, we get, okay, let's take financial success.
Yeah.
Right? It's good to be stable. It's good to have income, and please be smart with your money. So don't hear this.
Absolutely.
But like, there's a place where me and my wife got to probably the last couple of years where we're like, we've made more money and saved more money than we've ever saved, and in a healthy investing place. And I was like, good. But there was nothing life-giving out of it. Like, if I'm being fully honest. Now, it's always good to be wise.
That's right.
But I found myself in a bad habit of storing it, right? And storing it. You're giving some, but you're not giving when it hurts, right? And this is just me being vulnerable. And it's like, oh, that'll give me life. Because again, I think my success was getting written or believing the wrong way. It's an American perspective. And it bleeds into our heart, right? A little bit. And all of a sudden you get to the place you achieved or had a goal to get to, and you're like, okay,
yeah,
that doesn't give me any life. Honestly, I'm more miserable now. Let's just give it away, you know? So I think sometimes even our definition of success is a little bleeding into culture. A little bleeding.
It is. It definitely is.
One question I had in your book, I love this part here, and I'm gonna switch gears a little bit. Fans versus friends. You said this, it never ceases to amaze me how many Facebook fans we have, or something. I think that's pretty close.
Yep.
To how many Facebook fans we have. I thought that was really unique, because a lot of people talk about friends and followers, and there's a lot of weight in that word, friends and followers. But I think you got to a deeper part of social media. We talked a lot about giving love, but when we talk about receiving love, I talk to more people these days, thousands of followers. They have 12,000, 20,000, 40,000 followers, and yet they're empty.
That's right.
I want you to dig a little into that and kind of where you were getting that revelation.
Yeah.
That speaks to our world.
Yeah, that chapter I was talking about, two of my friends named Tyler and Travis. One is a pastor at the church here, and the other is a realtor here in Sioux Falls.
Mm-hmm.
And away from my family members, they're my two best friends. Mm-hmm. And through that dark season that I was talking about, I talked about the fact that love stays when everyone else leaves. Mm-hmm. And through your hard times in life, through your low points, your mistakes, your blunders, you'll find out really, really quickly who's a fan and who's a friend.
So good.
And that can be a really painful process, because people that you thought were fans actually turned out to be friends, and people you thought were friends turned out to be fans.
So good.
And that's a hard thing. And fans are fickle. Fans stay when it's best for them. When it's a good for them. Friends stay when it's not good for them, when it's hard for them, when it impacts them, when there's nothing they can get. Good. That's when a friend, and so that's when you figure out. And I looked at the story. One of my favorite stories in the Bible is that there's this paralyzed man who's got 4 friends who are trying to bring this paralyzed man to Jesus, but the house is so busy that they can't get him to Jesus. So they end up bringing him on the roof, tearing a hole, lowering him down before Jesus. And Jesus looks and says, their faith, not the man's faith, their faith has made you well.
So
And
good.
I just think it's so powerful. And so for us, who do we have carrying our mat? Who are the four friends, not the fans, that are carrying us and will do anything needed to get us to Jesus? Because that crowd, there's all kinds of people there in that crowd, but there's only four people carrying that mat.
Mm.
And
Mm.
I just think in that moment, it's like, who are those people for us? And if we don't have that, first off, begin to pray for that, but also begin to live that. I think so often we want friends when all we are is a fan to everybody else. You know,
Mm.
it's like, oh, you need to move? Yeah, I'm busy. Oh, important date for you? I'm busy. Oh, like we're gonna I'm busy. Oh, like busy, 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 busy. And then we go through a hard time. Where's all my friends at?
Mm.
It's like you've been the fickle person yourself.
Mm.
And again, it's not a give and receive type thing too, because you shouldn't expect, dude, I showed up for you every time, and then you didn't show up for me.
Right.
That's not the way of Jesus. But it's like, do we have any friends? And I'm saying friends are people you can call at 1:00 in the morning and say, man, I'm broken. Would you pray for me?
Mm.
Friends are the people that you can text, and you know they're going to text you back.
Good.
Friends are the people who are just going to be there on your worst day. And for me, Tyler and Travis were that. I mean, through my dark season, they'd be on the phone with me for hours.
Mm-hmm.
They would stop by my house randomly to pray for me. They
Mm.
didn't try to fix me. They were just present. They didn't try to give me like a pep talk that was like, you know, like, it's going to be great.
Right,
They,
right, right.
they sat with me in my pain and let me be wretched in my wretchedness, and it like just allowed me to be broken. And I just think that's such a thing that we're missing. We got all these fans, but we don't have many friends. And for me, the challenge, I was even talking with my parents about this the other day my parents were in town, and my phone was ringing constantly
Mm.
and vibrating the whole time. And I've gotten to a place where I'm just okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
And my parents are like, how do you get back to all these people? And I said, in another life, like years ago, I would have tried.
Mm.
And, you know, we have processes at the church where we do follow up with people.
Right.
But I just said, if I try to spread myself out to everybody, I end up being present to nobody. And
Mm.
so for me, I randomly told my parents, I'm trying to be present to 4 different groups of people. First off, to Becky and the kids, my wife and kids. I want to be present to the staff that I lead and pastor. I want to be close to my friends, my core friends. And then I said this last group that I want to be present to is the low income folks that walk by my house and my own actual neighbors.
Good.
And so those are the 4 people. Like Dwight is an 8th grader, African American kid, lives in the roughest house on our block. If Dwight stops by my house, I don't want to say, yeah, come back another time. No, I want to be fully available.
Good.
I want him to have full access. And so for me, those 4 groups of people, I hope that I'm a friend to them,
Mm.
not a fan.
So good.
And because I just want to be there when they're on their worst day, on their worst moment. I want to just, yes, I'm here. What do
Mm.
you need? And that's hard though.
That's so good, Adam. And man, like, it's funny as we get older, it seems like that fan base, might grow technically depending on what we
Yeah,
do, especially leaders. But it seems like the friend base actually gets smaller
it does.
and on some level. And I think even in like high school, college, like you have a lot of fans.
Yep.
But I think in life, especially in the hardest trials of your life, you start to learn who really is a fan, who's really a friend, like you shared. And I always share with people, like, you have to make time, like you're doing, like you're so super smart, like you know who those people are, and you delegate time. Like this weekend, I'm going on a camping trip with my best friend. I've known him since I was a baby, no lie.
Awesome.
But like if we don't plan those camping trips, it's not happening. Like he
Yep.
lives in Arkansas. I call him every Friday. Like we spend a lot of time together, but I know that relationship is a make or break for me.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of, his name is Jesse. There's not a lot of Jesses in my life. There's about maybe 3, maybe.
Yeah.
I think for us guys, as you're listening to Adam, man, you gotta know who your friends are. You've
Yeah.
got to know who those close circles are, those people that you spend time with. And I think a lot of us, it's easy to build the fan base. It feels good a little bit when people might want to follow you, let's say on Instagram or Facebook. And none of that is bad per se, but don't believe that those are friends. Because I think that's
Oh,
what happens to a lot of people. And then crap hits the fan, we lose our job, our marriage is a mess, and we have nowhere to turn. And
yep.
so, guys, I just really, really encourage you. Did you have anything else to share in that?
No, I think that is so incredibly true. And you will have friends that maybe have seasons. And God, it's just so cool. I the other night I was at a flag football game, and I saw my best friend from college. He's actually my best man.
Mm.
Was my best man in my wedding. Very, very close.
Mm.
We haven't remained close over the years for no bad reason.
Sure.
Just in different circles, and it just hasn't worked out. Here's what's so cool about a friend, even if you're not close to him in that moment.
Mm.
So my friend used to play college sports, is a very sports driven,
Mm.
and also very particular. So he's coaching one of the teams on the other field.
Right.
And in the past, he would not want to be bothered when he was coaching this kind of stuff because he's so focused.
Mm.
It was so cool though. There was a play was running, and so the coaches walk on the field with their team because it's flag football or whatever, it's young. And I yell over, I'm like, "You guys need help with coaching?" And he turns over and looks at me. And again, in the past, I felt like he would have been like, "Hey, Adam," like just waved and then went back to work mode. In the middle of the game, he saw me,
Wow.
ran over and hugged me.
Wow. Come on, man.
And he's like, "It's so good to see you."
Mm.
And then took a couple steps back and was like, things like was not in a hurry. You guys doing okay? Yeah, doing great. Man, I see you got another kid that yeah. I mean, we connected. It was only like 50 seconds long,
Mm.
but it wasn't hurried. It wasn't anything. And it was just such a cool moment of like, I mean, that's a friend.
Well,
Even if you're not even close right now in this moment, he's not a fan, he's a friend. If I needed him, I could call out to him and say, "Dude, I know we haven't talked on a phone for a while,
right.
but I need you." He'd show up.
Good.
And that's the difference. And so I think to realize who those people are, and they might change, not even for negative reasons, just like my friend that I just mentioned,
Right.
but know who they are and don't cancel on them. Don't be fickle with them. Don't be flaky. Like show up and be a friend that shows up.
So good, man. Also a thing, knowing who not a trigger, but something to look for is someone who tells you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear.
That's right.
That's something in your book. One of your friends pushed back on you. And I think, I don't remember what part of the book that was, but you said they were pushing at you. And I think that is a marker of a great friend, of somebody who is in your circle, who is for you, tells you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. Why are we afraid of that? And maybe, let's just start there.
Yeah.
Why are we afraid of that?
I think we're afraid of it for a few reasons. It's because maybe we've had different times where that's happened and there wasn't the relationship there to start.
Mm.
So you have to have the relationship to be able to say that type of stuff.
Right.
If you're just a person who's eager to always point out where everybody needs to grow,
Right.
that's one thing. But if you know, like, man, that this guy is a brother. This guy, I mean, we've been through a battle together. Then we have the ability to do that. And I think if we lead with grace and we genuinely love the person, and just like what you said, we are for them, not against them.
Mm-hmm.
There's no ulterior motive.
Good.
I think we sometimes hold back when that can be the greatest blessing.
Mm-hmm.
Even my assistant a month ago, she told me one day, she said, "Adam, you look tired."
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I do. I was like crabby. And she's like, "No, you haven't been crabby at all. You just seem tired." And I could feel it in my soul that I was a little bit. Well, the next Sunday morning, my oldest came with me. As we're walking up to church, he said, "Dad, do you ever have a busy week this week?" And I was like, what? And I was like, why are you asking that question? He's like, you just seem like you need a break.
Wow.
And
Wow.
I said, I've been crabby lately. And he's like, no, you just seem like you've been tired lately. I mean, that is a gift to be told that. Basically, I got two friends who are just kind of, one of them is my son and one of my assistant, just kind of waving the red flag a little bit like, hey, there's a meter, like your warning light's going off. Like, and I think we hold that back oftentimes when it can be one of the greatest gifts now. And I think it takes maturity to get there. I think that's why we don't, because we're insecure. I'm a very insecure person naturally. So we're insecure or whatever it might be. But the more emotionally healthy you get, the more you'll begin to invite that in. You know, I find myself now inviting it from my two friends, Tyler and Travis.
Good.
Hey, help me to see what I'm not seeing.
It's good.
You know, even this last week, my friend Travis called me out on something. He said, that kind of sounds a little paranoid. And I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah, that kind of sound a little paranoid.
Right.
And I'm like, you think so? And he's like, I do, just a little bit.
Good.
And I said, really? And at first, just to be honest, I didn't want him to say that.
Sure. Right.
It kind of was like a little uncomfortable.
Right.
Next day, came to him and said, hey, I want to thank you for saying that. I needed to hear that.
Good.
And so I think we worry it'll hurt the relationship. When done well, it brings the relationship to a deeper level. And it's one of the clearest ways that we can love our friends and our family.
So good. And if you're listening to this right now, not only know who those people are, but you have to give them permission, guys. Like, you gotta give them permission to say what they need to say in your life. And again, who those people are critical. Like you said, there needs
very critical
relationship first. My best friend has said many things to me that I didn't want to hear, but I needed to hear. My wife, I mean, we had a book and we just released a book, and she read the author copy, which is the earlier copy than the official one. And she read it and she was like, this needs fixed. You know, she was very open and honest. And at first I was getting mad. I was like, honey, we just put a lot of work in this thing. You know, tired, you're exhausted. You're like, honey. But she's right. And she's like, and I'm like, I don't want to change that. Like, that's so much work. We got to rewrite some things. But I needed to hear that. And I'm glad she said it. You guys, we have to have people in our lives. We got to have people in
That's
our
so
lives.
good.
It should be a few. It shouldn't be a ton.
That's right.
Not the critics, not the thousand, you know, some of the
That's
people,
it.
especially if you're a leader, you know, you get more and more pushback as you have more influence. But like, I'm talking about those close 5 to maybe 7 people saying, look, tell me what I need to hear. Even if I get mad, even if I get crabby or frustrated, tell me what I need to hear.
That's so good. What I've started telling people is that, hey, I just want you to know you have full access to say anything that you think I need to hear.
Okay.
And that can be an awkward thing to at first, and it can be again, who you say that to, extremely important.
Okay.
But it's one of the greatest gifts. Even on the team that I lead, and specifically when, like, early on in a relationship, I won't say anything about my entire life, but like, I will say to them, hey, and I want you to know that one of the things I value is pushback. And so if you see something that I don't see, like job related at first, I think and maybe there's even levels of trust that you build. Like, maybe it starts job wise, where it's just like, hey, if there's something that you see that I can do differently, or that would be helpful, please. And I think just inviting that and giving that permission, it takes maturity to do that. And that's why I haven't always done it well. But now I'm to a place where I can't imagine not having that in my life.
So good, man. Well, I know we got to wrap it up. Is there anything else, man, just in your book you want to share quickly? And then I'll kind of point everybody there and we'll get on.
I think for me, one of the coolest things that I mentioned a little bit, but one of the biggest challenges that I'd have is each day wake up and just pray, God, help me to see one person that I can go out of my way to love today.
So good.
And I promise you, it will turn into one of the greatest adventures. And I really believe that at the end of my life, those will be the times that God mentions. He won't mention the times that I preached to 13,000 people. He won't mention the times that I wrote books. Instead, he'll mention the times that I loved somebody who had no idea who I was, when I went out of my way to help somebody who didn't have anything to offer me in return. I think those will be the times that God is most impressed with. And because that's true, I want to spend my life doing those things rather than the things that I think are big and are actually insignificant in the eyes of God.
Well, Adam, man, appreciate you guys. Remember that love is the greatest expression of purpose. And I think such a good reminder. We have to not just redefine our love, but we have to make sure our love looks like Christ. And I pray that you guys felt Adam's heart like I felt it. And you inspired me, bro. For real. Like, you always inspire me, and now I'm more inspired to more like Jesus. So I know you hate this, and it makes you cringe, but guys, make sure you get this book. Love Has a Name. You can find it on Amazon. Adam, where else can they find this book?
You can pretty much find it anywhere books are sold. Amazon, Target, Walmart, Barnes and Noble. It's crazy. I can't believe I've got a book, but I would be humbled for you to get a copy.
Well, make sure y'all get a copy. Shoot, I'll even buy one for you. My goodness, I'll get a book for you. If you guys make sure you check this out. Local bookstores, Amazon, and we'll have the link provided also. Adam, thank you so much, bro. Love you, man.
I love you too. And Joey, thanks for being the real deal. Thanks for being an encouragement to me. And I have no doubt anybody who crossed paths, anybody who listens to your podcast, I know is encouraged. So thanks for showing me Jesus and just for being a blessing in my life.
Absolutely, man. I love you guys. We'll be back with another episode next week, Wednesday at 12 o'clock. Love you guys.